Hey there guys, and welcome back. On today's show we're talking about cabinet scrapers, how to tune them up or sharpen them, and how to use them. Okay, for those of you who don't know, this is a cabinet scraper, and basically it's a hard piece of steel that has a square edge here, or a flat edge here, and a flat edge here, and it's a square piece of rather thin metal. But what it does is, by sharpening and burnishing one of these flat sides, it acts as kind of like a mini plane blade, and it preps your flat work for sanding. And by using it, you're actually taking away a very thin layer of wood, and it eliminates a lot of the sanding process and really gives some great results. So I'm going to show you how to take a cabinet scraper and how to make a jig for resharpening it and how to burnish it. I just want to show you here the action of this scraper and the type of shavings that are being produced. And I don't know if you can see that very well, but there's more dust than there is shavings. I mean, we do have a couple of shavings there, it's not too bad, but for the most part it's this fine dust. And what we should be getting is something to this effect. And this is what we should be getting when using our scraper. We should be getting shavings. It's kind of like a fine planer blade. So from that first scraping, which is on the dull side of my card that I used, to one that I've already sharpened, I'm going to show you how to get the results to be able to get some nice clean shavings as opposed to this dust that's happening here. So after using a cabinet scraper, what happens is your burnish edge, which kind of has a bit of a hook to it, that's what gives it its good scraping action, but your burnish edge becomes all chipped up, and it's really not that detectable to the eye, although it can be, but you'll notice it because it's just not cutting nice and clean anymore. And the first thing you need to do is re-flatten these edges. So it'll be the long edges. I wouldn't bother with these little short edges. They're just too hard to work with. But for these edges here, first off you need to flatten them. And the way that we're going to do that is with a bastard file. And this is a 1/4 inch thick bastard file. And I'm going to show you here how to make a little jig to hold your file, so that as you're filing the end of your cabinet scraper, it'll be doing it flatly. So what you want to do is, about halfway through on this board, and this is about a 2 inch wide piece of oak, sorry, 2.5, about midway through you want to cut a kerf the same thickness as this file that will hold your file in this piece of board so that it protrudes about, you know, 1/2 inch sort of thing. So in this piece of board here, I'm going to put maybe I'm thinking maybe a 3/8 to a 1/2 inch deep kerf, the same thickness as the file, and we're going to do that over at the table saw. So I've got my blade height set at just a little less than 1/2 inch, and I have it set so that it will cut the kerf 1 inch into my piece of oak here. And I don't know if you can see that, but what I've done is I've marked my distance here. This is the thickness of my file, and that's the kerf that I need to cut. So I'm going to throw in the dust collection here, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this kerf for the file. So we have our piece of oak here, and it doesn't have to be oak, it can be anything, it can be MDF, plywood, whatever you like. But you place your file into that slot, and I've shown you guys this marker trick before with doing your roughing gouge for your lathe, but just run a black line across the edge of your scraper. I don't know if that's showing up or not, but you want to color in the entire end of your scraper. And the object here now is to hold your scraper down onto your oak board and up against your file. And you just want to run it back and forth on this file. Now it doesn't take much, and you want to do it until all of the marker has been gone. So you see there I just have a little bit left on the ends, so just pull it across the file just like that. A little more at the far end. And that's all she wrote. Now, depending on, of course, how bad your burnisher is, it may take more or less time to do it. But there you go. We've got that now with all the marker gone, and this now has a new flat edge on it. So with that now being done, we're going to move on to the next step, which will be flattening this edge. So what we have here is some 600 grit sandpaper, and we need to take off, if you feel this edge where you've just filed, you've actually created quite a burr on there. And that burr has to go because it's rather jagged. It's just going to wreck your work rather than improve it. So with some 600 grit sandpaper, you'll place it on a flat surface. In this case, I'm using a piece of MDF. I mean, I'd rather use a piece of plate glass, but in this case, all I have right now is the MDF. But you'll take this and you'll just rub it back and forth along this 600 grit sandpaper, and in no time at all you should be able to feel that, and that edge will be gone. So we'll just give it a little bit of a sanding on both sides, and then we'll turn it over and do it again on this side. And as I said, in no time you should feel that that burr is gone, and it is. And so now what we've got here is a nice flat surface and a burr-free edge. So now the next step here in order to get this ready for use is to burnish this edge. Before you start the burnishing process, you just want to take a drop of 3-in-1 oil. When I say a drop, I mean just a drop. And on the surface that you're going to burnish, just carefully, now you don't want to cut yourself on this, but just put a little coating of 3-in-1 oil. And then you're ready to burnish this. So I'm going to take this over now and clamp it into the vise. So there's a few tools that you could use to burnish your scraper. For me, I have a Veritas variable burnishing tool, and it's relatively inexpensive and comes with a half-decent scraper. So this might be something that you might want to look into. As well, you could have a burnishing rod. They come with a handle, and basically it's a piece of metal that is harder than the scraper that you're using. But the first thing that you want to do here with this when burnishing the edge of your scraper is you want to burnish it at 90 degrees. So for this particular one, the variable burnisher, you would set your degree of angle for your burnishing rod on the inside to 0 or 90 degrees. If you were using a manual burnisher, you would just hold it at 90 degrees as you're burnishing your rod, or sorry, your scraper. So for this one here, we're set at the 90 degrees. So we just want to place the burnisher down over top, making sure that you got clearance for it. In this case, we need to raise it up in the vise just a little bit. And once you've got it clamped in there firmly in the vise, you just want to take your burnisher and go over your cabinet scraper. Now this is, it takes a little bit of elbow grease, especially if you're using a manual cabinet scraper for this. But either way, get a nice burnished 90-degree edge on there. And there we go. Once you're done with that, for this here, again, I have the variable type. So I will dial this in here now to a 5-degree burnishing on the one way. And once I get that in, what you want to do is you want to put an angle on your burnish. If you're using a manual burnisher, you would tilt it roughly 5 degrees to one side and burnish along, and tilt it 5 degrees the other side and burnish along. For this one, it does it for me basically. So I've got it set for 5 degrees in the one direction of the tilt, and I'll just put a nice little hook or bevel on that, and then I will set this for the other degree, 5 degrees the opposite direction. And once I get it dialed in there, I'll tighten it down, and then I will burnish this in the opposite direction. Just like that. And there's quite a nice burnish on there. I could really feel that. So let's take it over to the bench now, and I'll show you how to go about using this. So here we are at the bench, and we've got our freshly sharpened and burnished scraper, and we've got a hard piece of maple. And the object when scraping with a cabinet scraper is you want to be taking off little mini shavings. If you're taking off dust, then your cabinet scraper is not very sharp. So what you need to do is hold it onto the board on an angle, just like this, and you want to kind of bend it away from you so that it's almost a little miniature curved surface. So bend it away and you push that cabinet scraper. You can feel that grabbing in there, and I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is what you're after. This is the gold of cabinet scraping, and it's those little shavings. So I'm just going to give it a couple passes here just to show you what I'm talking about. So you push it away from you, you give it a little bend and a little push away from you. And look at the end of this here. Like I said, after burnishing this and sharpening it, and as quick as what you saw me do it in the video is as quick as what I did it in person. So those are some seriously fine shavings, and this is a hard piece of maple, and this is nice and smooth. It really cuts back on your sanding, because there's no need to sand like crazy to get that nice smooth surface, because in essence you've scraped it down to that smooth surface, and it really doesn't take much. So there you go, using cabinet scrapers in your shop. And there you have it. It's as simple as that, guys. Don't discount the cabinet scraper in your shop. I mean, it's a versatile tool, as simple as it may be. It's a versatile tool, and it does a fantastic job. It'll really help you on your sanding. And like I said, this stuff here, that's scraper gold right there. It's fantastic. Give it a try. It's don't be intimidated by it. And what more can I say? Try it out. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you again next week with another woodworking video. Just one final note on the cabinet scrapers, guys. The method that I showed you here today is one of many to sharpen and to burnish your cabinet scraper. It's not the one and only by any means. I mean, I learned it from somebody else, and I'm just sharing it with you. So if you have your own way that you do it, that's awesome. you know what? I'd love to hear about it. Drop me a comment down the bottom and let's hear how you do yours. And I'm sure that other people who may be watching this video might gain from your experience as well by dropping it in the comments there. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching.